to the evolution of game discussion panel. We have Professor Will Lindsay here, students Nick Augustin and Dorian Byler. Is that how you pronounce it?
Close. Dialer.
Byler. Gotcha. Cool. So I want to give them the opportunity to kind of introduce themselves, talk about how they ended up at Rider, and then we can get into the major itself. Talk about that.
Sure. I'm Will Lindsay. I'm right now the only professor in game design. We actually just hired a new professor who's going to be starting in the fall. I'm pretty excited about that. I've been teaching game design for about 11 years. I've been teaching interactive media for 15 or 16 now. So most of that time was spent at Albright College out in central Pennsylvania. Things were a little different there. That was game design under the context of computer science. So I have a heavy coding base in my background, but I'm an artist by trade, and came to game design mostly through my freelance work, where I was doing interactive media and slowly got asked to do various game implementations over the years. These are Nick and Dorian are both second year students in the program. I'll let them talk a little bit about their experience there.
Yeah, I'm Dorian, and starting as a kid, I always really wanted to do like design games once I figured out that you could actually make a career out of it. So it was always something I wanted to do. And I was actually looking around for quite some time to find a school that was nearby and was to my liking and had game design, and it was surprisingly hard. But Rider came on my way, and it was nearby. I liked the colors, I liked the feelings that it gave me. And, I just thought it looked like a cool school. I went there and I loved it. And I also really liked the game design, the whole game design thing. I thought it was really cool. And it really interested me that it was the first year of them doing it, that they hadn't even done it before. I was going to be like one of the guinea pigs of this whole, program. And I enjoyed it. I remember I went to a meeting to talk about it, and I'm not sure what his name was, but I spoke to someone about like the whole game design program, and he informed me about Lindsay and about all of the stuff. And it was interesting. And here I am 2 years later, and I definitely love the game design program. It is awesome. And yeah, it's coming together.
Okay, yeah. And I'm Nick Augustin. Same with Dorian. I was looking for colleges, and I was originally a computer science major, and I was looking around for schools with just like good computer science. And eventually I was like, I saw Rider because I was going to go there for computer science. That was my major in the beginning. And then I saw like game design, and it was its first year, and that really appealed to me. Same like thing, like it's going to be the first year, so we're going to have like basically a say in like how we can be taught. And I thought it was really cool because that's like how Lindsay described in the beginning. And also like just like being in the game design like department, like for like learning, I don't know, it's just all the people were really nice, and like all the students were just like, it felt like better than another major where there weren't that like, there's so many people, like business, like this game design major, there were enough people where we knew everybody in the major, and it was really easy to communicate with everybody. We had one professor, and he had to tell all of us, so it was really easy to like collaborate, and it just like made it easy to learn.
Yeah, everyone was doing kind of like the same thing, and we all just got like super friendly with each other super quickly because I don't know, I feel like, yeah, like how Nick was saying, I feel like it would be different than any other major because most majors, they're really oversaturated with a lot of people and stuff. And I like, we had a small community and everybody loved video games, so it was really easy for everybody to just become friends and work together and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, and eventually there is no like awkwardness. Like everybody had a talking point because it was straight to video games. Like they would be interested in video games, and that's what most of us are interested in. So being able to just like start off before the like awkward like introducing yourself and just like going straight into things like you like talking about, it made like connections super easy to like happen.
These guys, I should give a little context to the experience they're going through. They're both kind of talking in past tense, and I guess that's because of COVID. But we're actually going to be back in the classroom in fall. I'm pretty excited about that. One of the things that I was excited about when I came here, so again, this is my second year at Rider. I came in at the beginning of the program. They spent about $1 million on 2 media labs, which one of them is focused on game design and the other is a more general media lab for audio and video production. And we've barely been in the room. We've spent more time at home during COVID than we have actually in the lab. So that's been an interesting experience. But yeah, I'm excited to be back there. Part of the context that these guys are talking about is remarkably, there's not a lot of game programs at colleges in the region. There are a few, but most of them are actually concentrations in other majors. So for instance, schools typically run game design as a focus in computer science. So you're actually graduating with a BS in computer science, but you can say, well, I had this focus in game design. I took these extra 4 or 5 classes. Again, my old program was very similar. It was a liberal arts degree in game design. The nice thing about it is, even though it sounds very focused, game design is a huge industry. We obviously all realize that right now, and still growing. And there's many, many, many different outlets. I think there's room for people who love art. There's room for people who hate art. There's room for people who love programming. There's room for people who don't like programming. And there's just so many facets to the industry right now. But more important, I think, for people that want to stay regional, is that the skills that you learned for game design are very transferable. Something that I've been looking at a lot recently is some of the major game engines we use, like Unreal Engine, is being used heavily right now in architecture and interior design, because it gives the ability for a client to kind of see a structure that they potentially be paying for ahead of time. And that means that, people with the skills generally using game design have other opportunities in other industries. And there's a lot of them. There's sports sciences is getting involved with it right now. The simulation aspect of it. I had students at my old program. I had a couple who went to work for military subcontractors for recruiting, and obviously for the simulation part of it. So there's a lot of different applications to this. My own work is in, I do work for trade shows and museums where there's interactive components for education purpose or to market products and things like that. So there's a lot of applications. But that gives a little context of the program. It's very wide, which I think can be difficult. And there's also game design. To be involved in game design, you have to be a certain kind of person who is both creative and an analytical thinker. And that's really difficult for a lot of people. It's that, you don't have to love math, you don't have to love programming, but it's definitely a part of what we do. You don't have to love art, but it helps. It helps if you do. And again, it's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think you guys really hit every aspect of what we kind of wanted to know in terms of what the program's like here and how it differs. But something that you guys did touch upon that I really did think about was just how big this industry is and how it is growing, and how even though it's growing, it's still hard to find a program around here that's exactly what people want. Nick and Dorian kind of talked about why it's so great here. But Will, you said that you were also teaching at Albright. How is that program itself different than it is, or different than it is at Rider than it was at Albright?
Yeah, so the program at Albright College is, or at least it was when I was there. I can't speak to the last 2 years of it, but it was housed in the computer science department. So there was a 50% focus on programming, and frankly, that can be really tough for creative students. I come from a fine arts background, and to me, code is like a paintbrush. It's another artistic tool that we use. And it's a great one. It's very flexible. And one of the things that I love about it is you can make your own tools. There's game engines out there, but most companies will roll their own to create their own interaction. And that's one of the amazing parts of it. But the programming side can be very daunting. And a lot of the programs around the country right now are experiencing heavy attrition because of that. So what happens is you get students who come in freshman year, and then they get saturated with this heavy programming and math base, and they don't really get to start doing what they want to do, and lose interest in it really quickly or burn out in it. It's not atypical for a program to have between 30 and 50% attrition freshman year, where students, even though they love game design, they just can't stick with the programming side of it, and they move on to communications or into visual arts or graphic
Can I
design.
chime in by any chance? Can I chime in?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I remember when I was first doing game design in the beginning of freshman year, and I was having a really good time with it and learning all the ropes and getting used to everything. And I believe it was the second semester of my freshman year where I was thrown into first coding class, my first and last coding class. I have not had one yet, but you can ask any single person that has been in that class with me. Oh my God, that was by far the hardest class I've ever taken. High school, college, at all. It was very, very hard. And, I don't really have any background with that. I'm not great at math. I'm not great at any of those things. And, I've never really had any experience with coding. And again, like Lindsay said, it's definitely something that creative people are going to struggle with because, that this is not what they're kind of like structured to do. Like I came into it, and of course, I had an idea that I was going to probably have to do something like this. It's part of the job. But, I was more obviously centered around, I'm going to go draw and do this and that and all that stuff. And so when I was thrown into this with not a great teacher, by the way, I don't know why we were thrown into this guy, but he did not, it was like he was teaching people who already knew what they were doing. And we did not know what we were doing. And it just made it all the more harder. And it was a very weird experience, but I hope that the next time we go into that field of game design, it's a better approach.
These guys are already, that said, it is difficult. It's not for everybody. I actually teach quite a bit of programming in the regular game classes, and these guys both did something amazing. I don't know if they realized it, but freshman year, they took a game studies class, and the second half of that class is actually dedicated to assembly language. And for people in the computer science side, assembly language, many people tell you it's one of the hardest programming languages you can learn. It's used a lot in game design because it's close to the processor, and so you can make things happen very quickly. But it's incredibly difficult to structure, and you need a lot of logic for it. But these guys learned assembly language in, I think it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and both managed to produce, not the best games in the world, but functional games, for an old console system called the RCA Studio 2. So I mean, there's another half to that. I approach code like I approach art, and I do a lot of things empirically. And one of the cool things about code is it's okay to mess up. The worst thing that happens is you have to reboot your computer. That's the absolute worst thing. But you mess up, or something doesn't look like you want, you scratch it, you rewrite a couple lines, you try it again, you try it again, you try it again. And it's in some ways, it's just like drawing. So I think, something that probably I have to work on, or that we have to work on in the program, is shifting that approach to code a little bit. Right now, because I'm the only professor, I'm reliant on other professors from other departments teaching what they know best. But teaching artists is a whole nother ball game, especially visual artists.
No, yeah, I think that's something that even some of us see, some of the AIM students, just because we're pretty much management students, so we're learning a lot of things that we're not used to, in terms of, going into theater and going into the music industry. That being said, you talked a lot about sorry, these allergies are killer this week. About how it's very artistic. Just the whole coding process, the game design process in general. And that's kind of what I know a lot of these guys want to hear you guys talk about. So when it comes to creating a game, the artistic value that it has, how important is that to the game itself? So if you are playing like a solo player game, and the animation, you don't like how it looks, but oh my goodness, the storyline itself is amazing. What kind of takes priority? What goes into that? What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, when it comes to games, there's too many, animation styles to even name. But what I'll do is I'll give you two examples. So like take a game like Cuphead, if anybody knows what that is. It takes, like the old like 50s through 70s like animation style, and throws you into like this fun like cartoonish gunfight type thing, right? And there isn't even too much of a story there. It's like, your soul got taken by the devil, get it back, have fun, and that's fun. And the animation is a big part of that. But then you could take a game like Call of Duty, right? And you don't even think about it for its storyline. Most people are like, you're killing each other and friends and stuff, but there's a campaign to it, and that was what it was in the beginning. And personally, I don't know about anybody else, but when you think about Call of Duty, I don't think about the story behind it. I think about, you're playing with your friends and you're doing all those things. And so personally, I don't like the story to that game. And, it all comes down to the way it plays. It plays like a fast running gun, do your thing, have fun, and and shut your brain off, really, so that definitely heavily impacts how you would play the story, and when you're playing a game like Cuphead, there's nothing else to it. You're kind of roped into the story, even though there's nothing there, because the environment is like its own story. The way that it shows itself, everything is all happy and cheery and cartoony, and you kind of just feel like you're transported into like this old world where it's all retro and fun. And yeah, I don't know. The animation style and the way that games play is a huge impact on how you enjoy it, regardless of the story. You could swap the two stories of like two games like that, and it wouldn't change anything. You would still like them like the same, because it's just the way it plays. It's a huge part of it.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time the first year kind of talking about that representation. I think it's one of the harder parts of game design too. I mean, these guys could probably name a dozen games that are just pieces of trash because of the way they look, right? Because of the style of it. I mean, I kind of like picking on anything with the word extreme or big rig in it that was released for any phone, is pretty much graphic garbage. I'm sure there's a couple gems out there, but if you love the genre, but there's also this whole visual communication side to what these guys are learning, and the industry is slow to catch up. It's 40 years ago, video games were made by one or two people, and now they're teams of hundreds of people. Very similar to blockbuster movie production. So things have changed a lot, but there's that learning curve that still goes with it. Low contrast in a GUI in the menu ends up giving people troubles, or bad placement. You have an element in the heads-up display that is where you need visual information in the scene behind it. So there's those kinds of elements that can cause a lot of problems too. Yeah, it's huge. We're a visual culture.
I think I also want to like touch upon um like as you said, like the story, if it's good and like the gameplay is bad, like if you've ever heard of like Telltale games, like it is completely like there is no like gameplay, like it is completely cutscenes. Like you are the only thing you are doing is literally clicking a button to make a character's decision, and it's just basically an interactive TV show. Like maybe like if you've seen like the Bandersnatch episode of Black Mirror, yeah, it's basically those that, but like extended into hours of gameplay, and they're comprised of like I played the Borderlands Telltale game, and Borderlands is my favorite series, so it kept my attention because I wanted to know what's happening in the series. And like same thing like with The Walking Dead, that's why like it got so much attraction. So like if that was just a completely random zombie guy like campaign, that wouldn't have done as well because now people want to know because of the story, and it's just not the gameplay that's throwing in there. And honestly, like vice versa, I still play a game that looks like absolute like trash, like an 8-bit, the original Pokemon games that are like 8-bit, black and white, like barely any design to them, but like they are my favorite games, and I like play them like religiously. So it definitely doesn't matter like what it looks like sometimes.
So while we're on the Telltale games, I played all the Walking Dead ones, just because I like The Walking Dead. You know, those the cutscene kind of games, they never really, tickled my fancy, but The Walking Dead really was the pulling aspect for me. It is a lot of cutscene, so there's a lot of animation and music that goes into that. The story itself, like, do you guys feel that music for certain games work and the music for other games like Call of Duty, it's just to turn your brain off kind of game? So why does the music matter? But do you still think it impacts the gameplay itself?
Absolutely has to. Yeah, music is probably one of the most important parts of video game, I'd argue. Like there could be like something like huge happening, and if there's not music behind it, you'll think it's like minuscule, and you'll look right over it. Like I saw this one video I was watching, and it was like a car chase in Grand Theft Auto, and it was just, if you've ever played Grand Theft Auto, you're just driving through like a city, and like if like police are chasing you, it's just okay. That's like not too intense. You're just hearing like chatter of the city, like sirens. But if you put like some kind of Fast and the Furious like music behind that, it makes it like how many times more intense. And then you like feel like you'll start like feeling more adrenaline, or like more emotion is brought to that game because of the music. Like it that said was like same thing with I Pokemon is one of my favorite games. So I'll bring it back to Pokemon. Like there is so many like battle like music scenes, right? And without like the music, it would just be something showing up on your screen, and then it would just be like blank. Like you wouldn't be too invested in it. Like with the music going, you have so like it feels like you don't have enough time. Like you have to make your decisions quick. You have to be invested in the game. It's definitely the music definitely is one of the most massive parts.
Yeah, I think that honestly, it's very underestimated how important music is because, like Nick was saying, like how you're saying with the car chase. Let's say you're playing a game and you're just walking around, whatever. You're walking around doing whatever you want, and then you don't see them yet, but enemies are coming up to you, and the music changes because of that, even if you don't see those enemies yet. So it kind of it sets you up. The music is not only just to set the mood, but it's also a part of the game. It sets you up. It keeps you ready. But like how Nick was saying, there are these old games that, the music is just kind of like a part of it, even if it's not like a central point in the game. It's very, very important to just your experience and having a good time. Like personally, some of my favorite music comes from Donkey Kong. I love all of those songs. I literally have a couple saved on my Spotify. They're just like, they're really jammy. I don't know what to say other than that. And I think that, if games didn't, take the time to implement music in a right way that fits the game, and like ropes you in even more, like these games wouldn't be nowhere where they are today. It's just a part of the game. It's like, I would say it's just as important as how the game looks is how the game sounds, because you're not gonna play a game that has no music at all. You're not gonna play a game that like you're just listening to footsteps walking in a hallway or something, or gunshots or whatever you're doing. Music is like half of the game. There's you got the visuals and you got the sound, and can't do one without the other.
I'm gonna show my age a little bit, but in before, I'd say GTA Vice City. I feel like that was one of the game changers with music, but before that, it was pretty typical for players to turn the music off, because of the memory that went into games. You always had these very short loops, which get really irritating, especially if you're grinding your way through a game. So a lot of people would get in the habit of just turning the music off completely and playing their own soundtrack in the background. I think about that now. I mean, obviously that's changed now that storytelling is such a big part of what's happening in the game industry right now. Again, it's getting closer to movies, right? I've been thinking a lot about Twitch. So Twitch is going through a whole series of Digital Millennia DMCA takedowns because of the music. And because of that, anybody who's watched Twitch for more than 10 minutes starts to recognize these kind of mediocre royalty-free music or songs that you hear over and over on channels because you're allowed to play those. And to watch somebody play, I watch a lot of GTA role-playing, and you'll hear this like 1930s jazz tune over and over and over, which completely changes it, but it changes what the game is. But at the same time, it's kind of entertaining. There's something to it. It drives the game in a different way, right?
I kind of like just want to add my own input on like the importance of music in games. One of my all-time favorite games is a game called Okami. And not only do I love that game for like its visuals and like its art style, but the music in that game is really beautiful. It's really pretty music. And I feel like that the music really helps like set the atmosphere and also gets you really pumped for some of like the boss battles in that game. So it really helps add to it.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm trying to think of some of the games that I play. Will, when you were talking about turning the music off, I am definitely guilty of doing that. Just because it would be the same song over and over and over.
I mean,
like in GTA 5, I know that they have a lot more options now. They have the radio stations, and the radio stations have their list of songs that they're playing constantly. But just in terms of music making the game, I'm just thinking about games in general now. Games obviously are a lot different now than they were back in the 80s and 90s, at least. My mom loves talking about how she can still play Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo Switch now. She loves it. That was her game growing up. And she's like, I love that I can just do this. And lately, whenever I go home, I walk in and her and my dad are playing Tetris on Xbox. Those aren't the games that I play. I play the sports games. I play Spider-Man. I like I'm all over the place. Where do you guys think games are heading in terms of popularity? Because my mom knows Tetris was the game. And I know it was for a very long time, but to me, the most popular games are the battle royale games, the shooter games, the sports games. So do you guys think it's going to be trending towards more of a battle royale kind of thing, or shooter games or sports games?
I think that right now it's battle royales kind of like the thing right now. I don't think that it's gonna last forever. I don't think it's gonna keep going more. Personally, I think that battle royale games are more of just like a fad. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a huge like thing right now. Everybody's doing it. Companies know that you do that, make a free game, battle royale, and then implement microtransactions equals money. Boom. But no, I do not. Just because that is the oversaturated market that there is right now, I do not think that is anywhere where games in general are headed. Because there's a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of other cool and creative things that you haven't seen before. One of the really cool things I think is the developments that we're making in virtual reality. Those are a huge step to where games are headed, only becoming more immersive and more realistic and all these things. And they're great. And, on top of that, there's just like more interesting and intriguing games that have, elements to it that you never even considered. There's this new game that just came out called It Takes Two. I don't know if anybody has heard of this game. But for those who haven't, basically it requires two people, and it's about a husband and a wife, and they're like going through marital problems or something. But you have to play together, and you have to work through these types of puzzles with each other. You can't do them by yourself. And I think that's really interesting. And I think there has been a couple games like that before. But you don't see stuff like that often. And I think that, as time goes on, it's going to give us more opportunities to do these like cool and creative things, especially with the evolution of technology. And by no means do I think that battle royales are going to be the games of the future, because it's just a thing right now. Everybody's doing it because they know that everybody's playing it right now. Don't get me wrong, they're fun, but
Yeah, I feel like after, because there were old battle royale games like what was it, like H1Z1 or something.
yeah, the mod for H1Z1.
Yeah, so like that was just like a PC game, and it was like one of the first battle royales, and it wasn't until Fortnite like brought it to console that everybody started like blowing it up. And now I feel like games are feeling they're obligated to make a battle royale because of how popular they are. I mean, it makes sense because of how much attraction it gets. So like, because it is fun, but it gets to the point where Call of Duty was making one for each game, and I mean they stopped it now. Obviously, they made it its own game, but like that's definitely a way to fix it. But if they were about to add a battle royale for each Call of Duty every year, like that would have gotten so repetitive. And like I feel like with Fortnite, and then we have Apex Legends, and the Call of Duty Warzone, I don't think there's going to be any more huge battle royale games, because this is like they hold the market. If there's going to be a new one, I mean it's going to be a fad for a little bit. Everybody will go back to the other games, because that was what happened with like I mean, well, Apex was the second one, but that's what happened with Apex. Apex got huge for like 3 weeks, and then went back to Fortnite. But I still think Fortnite is going to be one of the longer running games because of the potential of like competitions. Like it's so like you definitely will win money if you're good at this game, and I think that's where like a lot of games are heading. Like I think competitions are going to be very big in the future. Like I mean, even right now, and it's relatively new, like what was like $3 million for the last Fortnite tournament, and that's completely ridiculous. I think it only will go up. I feel like people like I don't know, like Ninja will be making as much money as, I mean, well, he already does, but more people like him will be making as much money as NFL players and people that are the best in their game.
So real quick, that being said, do you think that the fact that those games are all free to download, um, and they're pretty much just all based off of microtransactions, do you think that impacts its popularity? Do you think that's why battle royales kind of kicked off the way they did?
Definitely a huge part of it. I don't think that Fortnite wouldn't exist, but like if you had to pay for Fortnite, I think it would probably still be a game. It probably people would still play it. I think it would still be as almost as big as it is today, if not as big. Um, but it is definitely a huge part of it because Apex, like Nick's bringing up Apex. Apex was it was a gem. It was a gem that nobody heard of, and it came out of nowhere. And I think that it would have not picked up. It definitely would not have like gotten like the traction that it did if you had to like drop $60 or $30 for it. And now, after all this time, Apex is personally my favorite battle royale out of all of them, and it has great reviews. Everybody loves it, and it's definitely just it's. I think that without the fact that they were free to play, they would have never picked up. The ball would have never got rolling because free to play. Anybody will just like if you see a game that's free, like what's the harm? Be like it's free. Let me just play it. My friends are playing it. It's free. Why not? But once you get money involved, you have to have a reason to play it, or else what's the point in dropping $60-$30 for some random game that you've never heard of? So yeah, I think that because they were free, they were able to just be like, hey, come play this random new game that is using the same formula as all these other cool games. And yeah, definitely a huge part of it.
Talking about the future of this. I mean, I think these guys hit it right on the spot. I think distribution and how these companies make money is what's going to drive it. I mean, right now, one of the things I find really interesting right now is the class action lawsuit against Valve, right? So Steam is, I'm guessing everyone in the room of games has Steam on their computer. It is the only way to distribute a game on PC right now, which is a real problem. And whether that gets busted as monopoly or not, it's hard to say how that lawsuit's going to happen at this point. But something's going to have to change in the way companies are making money right now. That model's pretty fragile. I think people are tired of microtransactions. I think everybody understands that in some way you have to pay, that if you want good games, the people who create those games need to make a living. We all understand that. That's okay. And we're willing to pay. But, having it kind of snuck in on you, or, some of these different models that are happening right now are kind of problematic. And I think that's what's going to change the popularity of some of these games.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something that I've always been wondering, just because I see that, or at least a couple of years ago, Fortnite's just skyrocketing. The amount of money that they were bringing in, the fact that it was a free game and it's bringing in all that money was just unreal to me.
Yeah, and now it's a crossover with every single thing in existence.
Yeah, they're bringing in NFL.
They got ads from everywhere.
Star Wars. They're bringing it all in.
Literally virtual concerts with Travis Scott, man.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, they had like actual concerts.
I was at the Marshmello concert. I remember that one.
There you go. Like that's crazy.
So we have about 5 more minutes. I do want to open it up to any questions that anyone has. I know TJ was very excited for this panel. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask any of our panelists.
What do you guys think about the indie market right now? Do you feel like it's flourishing, or do you feel like it's a tough market to break into?
I mean, I definitely think it's not easy to get into it because, there's so many indie games coming out all the time. Like every single day, there's like probably like quite a few new indie games coming out, free to play, paid, or whatever it is. But that doesn't mean that it's not flourishing, because it is definitely, I would say, indie games is probably one of the biggest game genres in the market right now. But just because you're able to, a game can be made by one person and have their whole idea put into this game. And I think that's great. People make great games that way. And because of that, there's these great indie games that everybody loves and everybody gets into, small or big. One great example personally is like Binding of Isaac. one of my favorite indie games. And sure, it's got like this top-down, type thing that a lot of other games do, and it's got like a dungeon crawler thing that a lot of games have. Of course, it's not unheard of. But it does it in its own weird, unique way. And that's what indie games can do, is they're not going to go and make some first person like shooter, go kill the bad guy type thing. I mean, they can, but usually like they have this unique spin on it. And obviously it's going to be a little hard to get into that market because again, it's oversaturated. And a lot of people are like, hey, I can make my own game. Let me make my own game. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, because you never know. Like maybe your idea is amazing. Maybe you have some great unheard of idea that everybody's gonna love. But it is definitely one of the better sides of the game world, personally.
It's a tough market too. I mean, these guys they are going to start thinking about a job in a couple of years, and the AAA companies, they don't hire people fresh out of school. They just don't. They don't have to. They can wait and hire people with 5 and 8 years experience, and you have to get that experience somewhere. Media companies is one way to do it. Stay out of the game industry, or stay on the edge of the game industry. But indie is about the only other way to do it. Or companies that do advertising and then do like client-based games. That's another option, but it's a tough market. But I agree. And to some degree, I think the film industry and the music industry are like that too. I think that the most interesting parts of what's happening in the entertainment industry are happening on the fringe. It's where people have to take a risk and they're willing to take a risk, and that's when you end up with the best new material.
Can I ask one more question?
Let me see if Rebecca, do you have a question first?
Yeah, but if somebody wants to go before me, because this is more of like a personal question regarding something for school. So if you want to go first, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, I'm not sure if any of you guys will be of help for me, but for my class, I'm going to be transferring here, and for one of my classes in community college, we have to ask somebody like a professional for the degree we're going into, or like somebody that's in the game. So in my case, the game and interactive media design field. And I was wondering, I have like this PDF of questions I could ask, because you kind of like got to interview them. And I was wondering if there's anybody I can contact, or if you know of anybody I can contact.
This is kind of crazy. I don't know if you use Reddit, right? That's kind of an old people thing, but Reddit, there's a game dev channel on it, and there are a lot of people who are on there who are anonymous and work for companies. And I bet if you go on the game dev Reddit and ask openly, if you can interview somebody, you'd get responses to it.
Okay.
You may not know who they are, and they may not be allowed to say who they are. A lot of companies, you have a non-disclosure agreement. You're not allowed to talk about what you're working on.
Okay.
But they could anonymously answer some of your questions.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Awesome. TJ, real quick, because we are moving into the film festival soon.
Yeah, sorry. So I always hear about the crunch for game designers, game artists, and animators, and everyone involved in the company. Is that a real true thing, and how devastating is that crunch?
So game, when you get in between indie and AAA, it's a gig affair. It's you get jobs one at a time, and when the job's gone, your job's gone, and you got to find another one really quick, right? And they're very, very market driven. So yeah, on a certain level of game design, it's a real thing. On the indie side, it's tough because you don't necessarily have that hanging over your head. But at the same time, it's easy to run out of money. So you end up with a lot of indie developers that have a side job or have a real job and are doing this on the side. But yeah, it's a real thing. And it's probably one of the biggest complaints I hear about in the industry right now. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Awesome. Well, I did want to say thank you to you guys, Will, Nick, Dorian. I appreciate you guys coming out. I enjoyed everything you guys talked about. I feel like I learned a good amount, just in terms of the major itself and where the game industry is going, how it works. Because again, I'm just a casual game player, so learning about the ins and outs and what goes into it is nice to know. I know that there's a lot more than just playing the game now. Thank you for everyone that came out today. We do have the film festival starting up on YouTube Live, so go check that out as well. Otherwise, thank you guys again and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.